Hello guys, here's Max from the channel Learn Programming Together, and today we're gonna talk about new features of the newest version of C# language, version 6, which will come together with Visual Studio 2015 soon, I believe. And here I have installed Microsoft Visual Studio 2015 preview version CTP Community Technological Preview number 5, which basically it's a rough version and may contain some bugs, and actually I already experienced a couple of them while trying to test new features of C# version 6. I hope we will not have any problems while demonstrating these features. So basically in the new version, in 6th version of the language, Microsoft added some really cool features, but most of them, this is kind of syntactical sugar of the old features, but anyway they make our life as developers much easier and nicer. So let's start with the new features. First feature which I'm gonna demonstrate to you is the name of expressions. So basically, let's uncomment the first block of code. Quite often we need to raise an exception, for example, or log some variable which causes exception or whatever reason, and basically usually we just hard code this variable name in some exception, yeah, for example, or as here, as we have, I want to write line some variable name, and let's imagine we want to throw some exception, new application exception, and we want to say that the variable some string var causes exception. So usually we would do like that, and we would write is bug error. But of course this code is error prone and not stable. Why? Because during some refactoring we could rename, for example, this variable or completely remove it, but exception would remain and it would still log this string name, variable name in some log. So basically now there is a way to always get the correct variable name using new operator, new expression, name of. So basically here, for example, I want to log and to write into console the name of the string variable. So basically everything what I expect is not to write value but the name. It's perfectly working not for single variable but also for property names, for example, in the class. So here we have a class, very simple class, yeah, with one property, and I want to write the name of the property. So let's start and see. As you can see, it pops the names of variables. Good, some small but handy feature. Second one, string interpolation. That's a really cool feature, I like it. So basically before, how did we create a new string? Most of the times I use, for example, string format, and in string format we have this kind of placeholders which actually mean the position of variables which will be injected into the string, yeah, into this formatted string. And of course that was also error prone, because biggest problem with this syntax was that these positions, those placeholders could be easily for example, it was no control how many variables really are ready to be injected and how many placeholders really exist. So actually, and now there is a way how to create a new string, directly injecting into it the variables. So new syntax is like that. Here is important to note this dollar symbol in the beginning of the string, and using curly brackets we can inject the names, the variables inside of the strings. So basically this construction will create a new string with the properties name and country injected into it. If you would see, if you would look at the early how this feature was implemented before, you might encounter something like that. But later they decided to change it. And if you would see this notation, you maybe could notice that this is exactly how it is done in the new Apple language Swift. In this way, actually, it's possible to stringify the variable into a new string. But later Microsoft changed this notation, and now it is like that. So basically I expect now the console to be written exactly the same string twice, once using the old string format syntax with placeholders and one using the new syntax. So let's check. Exactly, you see, absolutely the same result. And this feature was called string interpolation. Next feature is null conditional operators. A really cool feature. So basically the whole idea is here that before, if you had any variable which potentially could be null, so basically any object or string, and we would like to do something with this operation, we always had to do some null checking here. For example, we have here string and we want to get length of the string, so always it will be some check for null, and only then operation of getting the length. Otherwise this will throw null reference exception, yeah, if we would not do this check and this variable would be null. So now we could do this operation much easier using the new syntax. So this question mark actually will check for if variable is null or not. So if it is null, it will return back null. If not, it will continue execution and will execute some operation on it. So basically it's clear that output value of every operation, including this question mark, should be also nullable. So that's why the sum length operation is nullable int. So what it will do, it will check if the sum is null. If it is null, it will return back null. Otherwise it will return the length of the string. And here I can show you more tricky example with array. So imagine we have an array of strings. First element of the array has some value and second is null. And we want to check the length of the second element. So how I can do it? Usually we would first need to do the check if array is null or not. Second if would be to check if second value of the array is null or not, and only after these two checks we could actually get the length. So now, as you can see, with this new null conditional operator, we can easily check if array is null. So if array is null, immediately null would be returned back. If not, we try to access the second element of the array. Don't forget that LMA is array is 0 based. So then we try to check this second element and also test it on null. and if this is not null, then we get the length of the string. This operation easily works with this double question mark, this null coalescing operator, which checks for null and returns some default value. So basically what we expect here, to check if array is not null, second element is not null, and if length of the second element is null, then we would return 0. So check what right line, what console will give us, exactly 0, as we expected, because this is null, yeah, second element, and length of it is null, so we get the default value 0. Really cool. Really cool. We'll save a lot of lines of code. Next feature which I want to show you is index initializers. So basically imagine we have here some old way how we would initialize the dictionary, yeah, of integer and strings inside. That would be new key pair objects inside, like that, would look like that. With a new syntax we can initialize indexes using this syntax. Yeah, frankly speaking, I didn't understand the whole idea behind of these initializers. Maybe some better usage of it can be applied, but for me those two variants are quite equal, yeah. Only here it makes some clear notice that this is index, this is value, yeah, using this equal sign, yeah, only more obvious, so to say. To use it or not to use it, that's your choice. Next really cool feature is called exception filter. So imagine you have some exception, some try-catch operation, try-catch block, and in catch now you can specify if condition, and depends on the result of this if condition, this catch operation would basically catch, execute or not. So this if condition should be a static function returning back boolean, and depends on this is it true or false, it will either go inside this block or in our case just throw not catched, not caught exception, yeah. So in our case this function always returns true, but basically here good practical implementation would be to log this exception into some logging mechanism which you would implement. So in our case it's true, if condition would execute as true, and we would get inside this block and we expect to see in exception block message, and it's exactly what we get. Just to prove that it's working, let's change value to false and let's see what's going on. And as expected we have unhandled exception because this if evaluates to false, and catch block will not be executed. Next feature is called await in catch and finally blocks. I cannot show it here in the simple example, because in order to implement await pattern, async should be used on the method. So I simply will tell you, basically now it's possible to have await in catch and finally blocks. So before obviously it was not possible, and as I read in the official explanation, development team didn't feel that it was necessary and it was tricky to implement it here, but now it's possible, yeah, to have await, in, catch, and finally blocks. In usual blocks it was always possible to have it, but in catch and finally before not. So now it is possible, use it. Yeah, next nice set of features is auto property initializers and getter only auto properties. Let's check, let's use our simple class. And so here we have the property, int property. And in order to initialize it, before we had a couple of ways. We could create backend field, yeah, and rewrite it using backend field, or we can initialize it in constructor, or initialize it already after object creation. But now it's possible to initialize it right in the class declaration like that. So basically it will initialize, it will not work through set operation of property, it will directly initialize backend property, which anyway implicitly created by compiler. So basically this syntax, now it's possible to initialize the backend field of this property. Next feature which I mentioned is called getter only auto properties. Yeah, so it's possible to create get only auto property with get operation only and also initialize it. Yeah, let's initialize it to 3, for example. So this is one way how to initialize this get auto property. In this case, this backend field will be marked as read only, and it will be initialized with this value. This is one way how to initialize it. Second way is initialize it into constructor like that. So either like that or like that. Anyway, it will affect the backend property of this backend field of this property. Yeah. So next one would be expression bodied function members. So basically what it means that now any method or function or everything what has method behind, statement block behind, could have not a statement block but expression behind, like that, for example. Let's imagine we have a method add which quite obviously adds first operand to second one and returns some result. So now instead of having a statement block, we have an expression. Expression basically looks like lambda methods, yeah, and it's clear that this method, which is equal to a statement return operand 1 plus operand 2, but only express it into expression view. So imagine here we have a return, it returns like that. If you have some method which has no return value, for example this one, print, it's possible also to write expression operation. For example, we want to print something, yeah, it will not return, it will simply execute what is inside. The same is applicable to properties. So imagine we have here properties 3, and basically it will return property 1 plus property 2 value. Let's check, and it's, you see guys, it's a bit not obvious from this declaration. What's that? Is that basically property or field? Yeah, because we don't see here getter, setter, but generally if you will put the mouse over it, it shows us that it is a property with getter only. So it's getter only property was created out of it. Next one and the last one, parameters constructors instructs now allowed. Okay, so obviously before it was not allowed to have parameterless constructors instructs in structures. And the last feature I want to show you today is using static import feature. So basically we can do like that, using static, it means that all static objects of this namespace will be available now. So now, after this declaration, we can use all static methods and objects of this system console namespace. For example, write line directly. So now we don't need to use read line, or you don't need to use this console. We can use these methods directly like that, or like that. So those were the 11 features of the new version of C# language, version number 6, which will come very soon, and it will come together with new Visual Studio 2015. So let's wait for official release, and thank you for watching, guys. That was Max from channel Learn Programming Together. Bye bye.